Hello and welcome to Microsoft Planner, Tasks, and To-Do Best Practices. Today we're going to talk about how to help different scenarios inside of an organization and how to help with task management and accountability through leveraging these tools through the Microsoft 365 platform. My name is Nathan Austin. I'll be presenting today, and joining me behind the scenes is Stephanie Kingsland from Mytech Partners. All right, let's get going. One of the common scenarios that we're going to run into today, I don't know why. Oh, I hit it twice. Sorry about that. Let's dig in. So the purpose of this session is really a how-to. We're going to actually show you how to solve some common problems. I'm not saying you have all these problems or that maybe you're struggling with this, but we're going to run through a few common scenarios that we see in organizational team management, team collaboration, as well as individual task management and accountability. I think we all find ourselves, we're not all necessarily managers or team leaders or supervisors, but even if you are a team leader or supervisor, you also have to manage your own tasks and responsibilities. So there's a piece of it that applies to every team member in your organization, and then to you as a team leader or a manager that might affect you as well. We're actually going to kind of talk through those scenarios and some of the common problems. We'll do a demonstration, and then at the end, we'll do some Q&A and recommended next actions. So forgive my humor at the top: planner, tasks, and to-do. Oh my! Hopefully that's not too cheesy for the session today. But quick reminder, we are going to go through about 30 minutes of content today, and we're going to move quickly. The session is recorded, and we're going to share that with you afterwards, so that if you want to go back and hit pause or play or kind of go through it yourself as you're working to adopt or drive some of this internally, that's fine. That's great. That's exactly why we're doing this session and recording it. But we're not going to pause during the session until the end. So with that said, at any point throughout the session, if you find that a question's popping in your mind, I would really appreciate it if you use the Q&A panel and go ahead and enter that question in the moment. That way, when we come to the end and we open it up for questions, we already have a list of potential items to address. Now, I'm presuming that I'm not going to do the perfect job of communicating this with you, and so there will be questions that I'm not going to answer everything through it. So I'm hoping that we do have some questions that we'll dig into at the end. But yeah, please use the Q&A panel. Okay, with that said, there's just a little bit about Mytech. We'll take 1 minute about Mytech. We are a small and medium business computer consulting organization. We deliver IT services to different small and medium businesses. What we've learned over the last 20 years of being in business is that we have a proven IT strategy that we know can deliver consistent and reliable results for you, our client. We don't believe that removes all challenges, but we hope that we try and remove as many of the IT challenges that any organization may face, because ultimately we don't exist because of IT, we exist because of our greater purpose. And so by removing those IT challenges, we really hope that we can enable you and all of your team members to invest and spend more time on your purpose and fulfilling your mission, or being able to serve your customers better and be more adaptable to other business challenges. So putting all that together, our clients achieve 4 times more value and productivity from their IT investments. If you'd like to learn about how we do that in a little bit more depth, by all means, raise your hand, let us know. We'd love to have that conversation, but that's not why you're here today. So let's move on to the session about planner, tasks, and to-do. All right, so here are the 3, there's probably more, and this probably doesn't address every single scenario or problem, but there's 3 main scenarios that I believe probably any one of them touch a good number of organizations with whom we work. And that is that you might have a leader, manager, supervisor, whatever you call it inside of your organization, a coach maybe, that is either responsible for a team or multiple teams or departments. That's oftentimes a scenario that different organizations, especially in small businesses when we're wearing multiple hats, you might not be just the leader or manager of a team, it might be multiple teams. So we're going to talk through that scenario and how you can manage through that, as well as if you're a supervisor. Again, if leader, manager, and manager supervisor typically means you have people reporting to you. And there's also some scenarios we're going to run across today where it's not just your team members, so you and your team, but it also is you and your one-on-one direct reports, and how you can work with them potentially better leveraging some of these tools. We will also talk about a scenario where there's not necessarily someone that is a manager or supervisor, or it's not necessarily a department. It might be a cross-functional team where maybe you've got members from different departments in your organization that are working together and collaborating on a solution, and how might you be able to structure the use of these tools to help manage tasks and accountability with that kind of a scenario. And there's a similar scenario, but slightly different, that applies to kind of a cross-functional group, is maybe a short-term project. So for instance, maybe you have a project that you're bringing a group of people together, and they're really only going to exist for the life and duration of that project, and then they're going to go away. The group is going to be not removed, but necessarily the team is going to be disbanded. They're not going to be collaborating because the project's done. And so we'll talk through a couple different scenarios that in ways in which you might be able to leverage these tools in that scenario. And finally, and I am intentionally saving this one for last, is because we are not only, even if you're a supervisor or a manager or a leader, you're also a team member, right? So the last scenario, I believe, applies to anyone in your organization. So not only the team members that might be direct reports, but also team members, because if you're a manager, you also are part of the overall team, and you have accountabilities and responsibilities and tasks and action items that you are responsible for executing as well. So we'll talk about how individual team members can keep track of and manage their tasks. So those are 3 scenarios that we're going to run through today, and those are some of the common problems that we talked about. And these are some of the other ones that I was going to say, that we're going to talk about how visibility, we're going to create some visibility and how that creates accountability. One of the things that I know I struggled with, especially on the leader manager responsible for different teams, is I struggled with having all the information and my action items and things that I'm supposed to do, but that I'm trying to help hold my team accountable to, trying to juggle that different information. So we're going to talk about how we can consolidate all of this in a way that across your organization, it can really help increase productivity and accountability, primarily because you're creating simple visibility and everyone being on the same page. So with that said, let's dig in to the demonstration. Okay. All right, so again, don't forget to throw those questions in the Q&A as I switch over to the first scenario that I'm going to run through. So the first scenario is I'm going to talk through being a team member. So I'm going to hit Teams here. All right, so if I am in this scenario, I am going to be the manager of the owner, manager, leader, coach, supervisor of the operations team. So one of the problems that you might, if you haven't used these tools before, and if you use other tools that are readily available that a lot of people use, is that if you're running a team and you might take meeting notes, sometimes those meeting notes are then captured and sent off in an email, but there's action items in that email. And then in order to make sure that either you are doing your tasks or your team is doing their tasks, you're having to go back on past emails to keep track of action items. Or maybe you have an Excel spreadsheet that you're keeping track of action items and to-dos, but yet then if you have multiple teams, now you have to try and manage multiple different Excel spreadsheets. So I'm not going to run through all those scenarios. In fact, we have other content where we've actually walked team members and managers through structuring their team and these tabs across the top that I'm showing here, these tabs across the top, in a way where you can more effectively run your department meetings using Teams. But a lot of that is consolidation of the information. And so today we're just going to mainly focus on the action items that might come out of the discussion, or action items that come out of your team meetings. So let's start with, if I'm the manager of this operations team here, and if for many of you, if I was in the room with all of you right now, I'd ask the question, how many of you are familiar with Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS, or Traction? This isn't specifically Traction, but this very much aligns with the Traction methodology of having kind of action items and to-dos. And so this also applies to that scenario. So if you notice, I've created multiple tabs across the top here. And I've one of those tabs I've called action items and to-dos. So this is one that I've already added to the scenario, but I'll show you how to add this in a moment. So I'm going to click on that tab, And what it's doing is it's actually opening up what is now being called tasks by planner. Notice this pops up. This was originally added as a planner tab, but what Microsoft is doing is they're renaming the planner app in Teams, as it says, to tasks by planner and to do. So they're really trying to consolidate where you need to look for the tasks and action items that are assigned to you as an individual. But also acknowledging that if I'm on the operations team, if I'm a team member of the operations team, I don't necessarily need to have visibility to a team member that's on the marketing team, for example. So this is the plan that we've created that's an action items and to do for the operations team. So using Planner, you can see there's different buckets is what they call them here. If I want to add a task, or if I want to manage this existing task, the key things that you can deal with when you have one of these tasks is to whom it's assigned. So you can actually choose to whom it's assigned here. Of course, have a title at the top. You can identify what bucket it's in, the priority, start and due date, as well as potentially identify some sub-item checklists or additional notes. So these are the things that oftentimes need to happen. I mean, if you think about if you're a team member, or excuse me, a team manager or leader, and you're having a conversation with your team in one of your weekly team meetings, and you identify, all right, Nate, talking to myself here, or me as a third party, or Stephanie, if I was adding her, saying, Nate, you said you're going to be able to take care of this this document here, or this task. It's assigned to you. When are you going to get it done? So we can say, oh gosh, the 4th is a little too soon. I can get it done by the end of the month. Great. So now we have alignment of what I'm doing, who's assigned, when it's going to be done, and the sub checklist items. So I'm not going to get into too much of that because that's while this is a part of the content today, I want to talk through these scenarios a little more. But overall, understanding that Planner creates the opportunity for your team to be able to have quick and easy visibility to tasks that are assigned to them. So when you're in a team meeting and you're saying, oh, let's review the tasks and action items, great. So we've got this one that was due last month. Well, gosh, Gerald and Nate were assigned to this. We can bring it up and say, hey, Gerald and Nate, where are you with this task? And it's not necessarily, it's just visibility creates accountability, right? Everyone on your team is going to have visibility to this. And so this can help you as a manager, not only help hold your team accountable because everyone has agreed that they're going to do this task that's assigned by this time and the sub items, but also they have quick and easy access to it. They don't have to come find you to say, hey, what was that task or what was that thing you needed me to do? Because you put it right here inside a planner that you can link inside of Teams. So I'll show you real quick. So this is what I would recommend. Again, we go deeper into other sessions, but if you can use Planner in this way, you on your team members as a team leader, you now, because you've basically written it down, you don't have to try and remember as a manager that might be responsible for one or multiple teams. You don't have to try and remember all of these different tasks and who's accountable and who's responsible. You don't have to try and go across multiple different spreadsheets or different notes and different email notes that might have been sent out. When you've agreed upon as a team or your department that there's an action item and there's a due date and there's specific things that need to be done, don't put them in your notes. Put them here, put them inside a planner. And that way you can basically keep track of them. Everyone has visibility to it. If they're a member of the team, they have visibility to it. If they're not a member of the team, excuse me, then they will not see these. So there's inherent confidentiality here too. All right, so how did I get it to be a tab at the top? So I'm going to show you an example of how you can add a tab. So if you click on this little plus icon here, click on that. So one of the things that it used to be, if you're familiar in the past, this used to be called Planner. And it still is in the web version called Planner, but Microsoft, they're trying to consolidate that. So they're starting this transition where they're calling it Tasks by Planner. So if you click on, again, I'll show this again, the plus icon over here. Click on that, and it's where you can add a tab. And it's now called, when you used to see Planner in this list, it's no longer called Planner in this list. It's called Tasks by Planner and To Do. So you click on that. And then what you can do is if you can either create a team or create a new plan, excuse me, or use an existing plan. Now, what I will tell you, and I think it's a little tip, is that if you haven't used Planner yet, and by the way, if you're rushing off to do this right now with me, here's a tip to do before you do that is if you create the plan the way I'm doing right now. So if I hit create plan, if I create the name right now, it will actually create the plan, and it will automatically add all the people on this team to that plan, because it's connecting the dots, because you're inside of the team. I'm inside the operations team, for example, right now. And if I were to create a plan from within the operations team, it's automatically going to assign that plan the same permissions of the people that are on that team, as opposed to me having to go later and add individually all those members of the team. This is the way where I can create the plan, if you don't have one already, from within the team, and it'll add it to the tab at the top. It'll create the plan, and it'll automatically assign all the individual members of your team to that plan. For the sake of this, I've already created one, so I'm going to use an existing plan here. And so I'm going to pick a different one, technician work orders, as an example. So it's setting it up as a tab. So now the technician work orders comes in, and here's another plan. So you can have multiple plans per team. And so this is an example of where I've just added another plan to my tab, to my tabs at the top of my my operations team here. Okay, so that's one of the scenarios, is if you're a team manager, team leader, department head, this is the way in which you can hold your team accountable. I'm going to get, and again, we're getting to the team members section next, but so this is if you're doing the team accountability, but what about one-on-one accountability? So what I'm going to show you here is I'm going to go to the chat. So what I've done as a manager is in my chat, I've actually created, I'm going to go to Stephanie. Stephanie's one of the folks on my team here in this scenario. And I've actually created I've added tabs here at the top, and I've created, call it the SK plan, Stephanie Kingsley. So the SK plan, notice it popped up planner, and basically I'm able to, if this is the one-on-one plan, so Stephanie and I meet on a weekly basis, and we have one-on-one action items, we can put that in an individual plan that was uniquely created for just Stephanie and I to have one-on-one. So for instance, I click on here for members, and notice Stephanie and I are the only two members, and so this is only visible to Stephanie and I. As far as that goes. And so that's one of the ways in which, if I'm a manager, instead of me trying to also keep track of every single individual member of my team, action items that might just be agreed upon in a one-on-one capacity where we're not trying to create team visibility, this is the way you can do that. Now, if some of you have tried to add a plan to a chat, there's a little bit of a workaround. I'm going to show you that in the next scenario, but stay tuned for that, because it'll apply to the short-term project scenario. So, but again, summarize as a manager, this is one of the ways in which you can do it, as far as, and you don't have to do it this way. I mean, you could still use an Excel spreadsheet or otherwise, but the value of doing it inside of a plan is the fact that it helps consolidate your visibility from to-dos, as well as your team members' visibility into all their different action items. Okay, so that's the scenarios, the first scenario, as far as the department head, department leader, or manager. Okay. Let's move to the second scenario, which is if you're a cross-functional team lead, or potentially a short-term project. So I'm going to go back to the teams section of teams over here. And I actually have a team that we've created called, lo and behold, cross-functional team. So I'm going to click on the cross-functional team here. And so we actually have, we've created a team. And so one of the scenarios that is a common question that gets asked whenever I talk to folks about this scenario, because it happens in almost every organization where, you know, it's not a department, but you have people from different departments or different groups of folks that need to collaborate on something. And if it's a long-standing group, meaning it's going to persist over time, I would recommend making it a team like this. So if this is a cross-functional team, like for instance, in our organization, we have a product development team that consists of executive representation, technical representation, sales representation, and marketing representation, and process representation. So we have kind of 5 or 6 different aspects of the organization that are involved in this standing cross-functional group. We have a team called product development. So, so you don't have to call it cross-functional team, but there's different scenarios in your organization that might apply to having a long-standing, persistent, a group that's going to exist over time. Might have different members over time, but it's a group that it just continues. I'd probably make it a team, because when you make it a team, you can do exactly what we just talked about relative to the operations team, is that you have a plan. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to hit add again. I've already created this this team. So I'm going to go to, or the plan, excuse me. I'll go ahead and select task by planner again. and I'm going to choose use an existing plan because I've already created it, but I wanted to show you how to add it again. And then I just select this plan. Now, by the way, if there isn't an existing plan that is part of this group, right? When you create, as I mentioned, if you create the plan from within the team, it automatically assigns this group as the same permissions. So if I had created, like, there's other teams or other plans, excuse me, that I have in my that's possibly available, but the only one that matches the permissions of this group is this plan right here. So don't fear if you're wondering if someone else can add that somebody else's plan to this group. When you're adding a plan to a team that you will only see, and you're choosing existing plan, you will only see plans that are available to that team that have the same permission set as this team. So I'm gonna hit team accountability, and I'm gonna go ahead and hit save. And it's gonna say it's gonna call it team accountability. So now I've just added this. So if I'm in a cross-functional group and we have maybe a monthly or a quarterly meeting or whatever the frequency is, and we're trying to keep track of action items, here we go. We've got, action item assigned to me due on the 29th, an action item assigned to Stephanie due on the 15th that's partially done, and an action item assigned to Gerald that's due next week. So this is one of the ways in which you can, if you have a cross-functional group, use Planner to create some team accountability there as well. And again, in small business, what I found is that a lot of department leaders or managers or supervisors might sit on department heads as far as their team and one or more cross-functional teams. And so part of the challenge and part of the problem we're trying to solve is how can those folks that have accountabilities across multiple different groups, how can they keep themselves organized and help them be accountable to their team members with whom we're trying to collaborate and work and get projects done on time. So that's the first scenario. Again, very similar to the department scenario, but wanted to run that because it is a slightly different, and there's a reason why you might create a cross-functional team as a team, as opposed to the second option here is to create if it's like a short-term cross-functional group. So for instance, I have a chat here that I've got ready here. I've got a small short-term project collaboration. So I've added Stephanie and Gerald to this team as well. But what I've had to do, in fact, I'll show you this. I've added Planner here as a link. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to remove this and show you how I did it, just to illustrate the point. I'm just going to remove the tab. It doesn't actually delete the content. It just removes the tab. So when you're in a chat, there's a slightly different way, and this applies to the one-on-one that I showed you earlier too, by the way. But I need to do a little. I just realized I need to do a slight little prep because there's one I forgot to. I need to copy a link. So I'm going to go to taskbar again. So here I'm going to go to my planner. So here I've got my small group collaboration, this plan that I want to add to that small group chat. Okay, so I'm actually just going to copy this link. So I'm going to hit Control-C just to copy that. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to Teams, and thank you, PowerPoint. I'm just going to minimize PowerPoint because it is it keeps doing this, filling the screen part. So I need to get better at that. So I'm going to go back to Teams. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the plus icon, and I'm in a chat. Notice I'm in a chat. So I've added multiple people to a chat. I've just renamed the chat as small short-term project collaboration. I'm going to hit the plus icon here. Now notice in this here, you do not see tasks by Planner. You don't even see Planner as an option. So, and I said it's not there, I promise you. But so in chat, you have different functionality. So this is a little bit of a workaround, and just be aware that it's a workaround, but I can choose website. So again, as I hover over it, it says add websites you need to get to in a hurry. So really, when you look at Planner, it's just a web address. So I'm going to use this function to be able to add a plan as a link to my short-term chat, my short-term project. So I'm going to call this my short-term project actions. And then I'm just going to, now remember I copied that link earlier. I'm just going to paste that link here. Once I paste it in there, of course it says only link sites that contain trustworthy content. I'm going to click save. So now it adds a section of the tabs of this plan. So now I can actually have the small group collaboration plan as a part of my small group project, short-term project collaboration chat. Again, this is a workaround. What I did is when I created this, the members are just, again, Gerald, myself, and Stephanie, but I created it as, and I'll go to the web browser here and I'll show you how I did that. So you can see the way I did that. So in Planner, so what I went to office.com. So that's one of the ways, if you haven't done that, I went to office.com. I clicked down here, opened up Planner. That opened up this tab here. And I just clicked New Plan. So when I create a new plan, I put plan name, I put small group collaboration here, and I chose private. So then it says only members that I add can see the plan contents. So then what I did is once I created it, I added Stephanie and Gerald, as you can see up here, and that's how I created this plan. So be aware that when you create that plan, you do that private plan, it also creates a site, because what you're doing is you're creating a permissioning group. Microsoft calls it an organizational group, and that's why when you hear the term groups, it's really talking about permissioning. So it also creates this SharePoint, a corresponding SharePoint site, even though I just created a private plan. So this is where plans and sites are created together. So I have a little asterisk denotation that I want to make sure I communicate to everyone, which is that you as an individual, either as a manager or as a team member, might not have the ability to create a private plan or to create a plan. If you need that, then let's talk about it to make sure you do have the right permissions, because of this connectivity, that when you create a plan, you're also creating an organizational group and you're also creating a SharePoint site. We want to make sure that only certain folks, that it's authorized, it's part of the strategy and design that you want. And notice down here, it gives me this pop-up. It wants me to also add an associated small group collaboration team. Well, for the purpose of the scenario and this part of the scenario, I don't want to create a team because this group is not going to exist very long. Once the project's done, I'm going to be done with it. So just be aware of, that's a little kind of asterisk public service announcement relative to this scenario, is that when you create a private group like this, you're creating an organizational group, you're creating a private plan, a private SharePoint site, and but not necessarily a team. When that's what back when Planner and Teams first came out, that created all of the above. So they've kind of broken the teams part, but it almost wants you to add a team to it. So just be aware of that. Again, that's why I said this is a little bit of a workaround. And if you have a long-standing team that you intend on using, I would recommend creating a team like the cross-functional group team that I mentioned. Okay, so now let's go to the third scenario, which is the team member scenario. So I'm going to go back to Teams. And one of the things that I really appreciate what Teams has done is that they've added this. They've added the Task by Planner as an app. So I'm gonna, if you have the ellipses here, right? Click on that, and you'll notice Task by Planner is an option. So you can select that. But if you want to use it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click. So you can't see me right click, but I'm right clicking for everyone watching. So I'm going to right click on this, and I'm going to click Pin. So that way I don't necessarily have to click the ellipse to get to it again. So I'm going to hit Pin. And so now notice that has created Task by Planner here. And so if I'm a team member, this is what I would recommend your team members do. So I'm going to click Task by Planner here. Now that I clicked on it otherwise. So I'm trying to minimize that there. So click Task by Planner here. And now you notice that I see other items. So like I'm part of the operations team. I have my cross-functional team here, my marketing team plan, but I've also got some of these other capabilities here, which is these are like smart lists. If you've designated anything as important, it'll show up here. If you've planned anything, it'll show up here. Anything that's assigned to you across any of the plans will show up here. So for instance, the source, these are the different plans and the names of the plans, and here are the different tasks that are assigned just to me. So if I'm a team member and I'm just trying to manage my tasks that are just assigned to me, this is where I can go, is Task by Planner. Just click on the ellipse and you end up pinning it. And now you can just click on this, and any planner tasks assigned to you across any plan on which you might be a part will show up here. You can also create other lists. So for instance, you know, if I have a department list, or I created one as a sample of a personal to do, don't forget this or this other thing, plan a date night, if people want to add that to their to do. So this is integrating Planner and your tasks and your to-do, and I'll show you where that goes. So, but I wanted to keep focused on the teams part of it. So as a team member, this is where I would start, is you've got task by planner, if you're using planner across your organization, but this is pulling in two other components that I want to make sure that I show you, tasks being one of them. So I'm going to minimize this, and I'm going to open up Outlook really quick. I'm just going to get out of PowerPoint because it keeps asking me to do that. So I'm actually going to go to Outlook. And so what I've done is I've gone to my tasks in Outlook. And so these tasks, if you notice, are going to be the same as what I pull up in Teams. So these are the tasks that I've got associated with this. And I'll pull this up here. And I've got the same tasks. Well, I believe so. Yeah, new task to complete today. New schedule and planning, add a task to my list, and logo. So these are the tasks that are here that are also in my Outlook tasks. So if you're someone that adds those tasks, and again, I can go here and I can click into a task like new task, click, and I can choose the due date or not. I'll just say I could choose the due date of tomorrow. All right, now that's done. It's been added, new task to do. I'm going to open up Teams. And I'm just going to hit, I think there's a refresh button here. I'm going to hit F5 as a refresh. I'm going to click out of it and click back to it. And usually that does it. New task to do just popped up. So it's something that it syncs back and forth really quickly. So that's one of the things, if not everyone uses tasks in Outlook, but this is, if you do, it works great here. The other variable, if you're in Outlook, is potentially using flagged emails. So for instance, I don't recommend marking things as unread. Let's say this is something I've just joined this and I want to have a task associated with it. I'm actually going to flag this over here and say that's something that I want to do. So that way I can consolidate that instead of having to scroll through all my emails to find my flagged emails or sort, but only see my emails, because let's face it, everyone, as team members, where one of the places where we get action items assigned to us or requests that come to us are in our email. And so how can we take the things that are coming to us in our email and consolidate them into our other team to-dos, our cross-functional group to-dos, or department, et cetera. So I'm going to now show the to-do app. So this is the other variable that you can do. So I've got my tasks. Again, this shows the exact same task list that I just showed in Teams and that I just showed in Outlook. The one thing that to-do adds to the equation is flagged emails. So notice the flag, I just flagged this one moments ago and it just added into my flagged email. So this is a place, and using to-do as an individual, that I can then see planner tasks that are assigned to me, flagged emails that I flagged for myself as follow-up to do that I can choose to assign a due date, tasks that I may be using inside of Outlook, and then I can also have the personal to-dos, as I illustrated earlier, just other lists that I can create to manage my to-dos. So ultimately, as a team member, and again, this applies to you, department leaders, department managers, supervisors, et cetera, cross-functional group leads, is that for you as an individual and for your team members to manage their tasks, they're the one of two places that I would look, and again, it's almost a personal preference, but to-do brings in the flagged email component of it, is either in Teams, where you have the task by planner, and you have all these details here. Again, notice the flagged emails aren't showing up in here. I'm not sure why that doesn't do that. Maybe that's going to change. Or in the to-do app, where you can look at, you can see all of the tasks that might be assigned to you across assigned, flagged, tasks, personal lists, and then you can manage your time that way and keep track of your accountabilities. So those are the final scenarios. The last comment that I'll mention around a team member is that those also work on mobile. So when you, and forgive me, I'm going a little bit over time here, but you can add the to-do app to your phone, and you can also pin the task by planner to your Teams app on your mobile phone too. So that's something you can do to also be able to access this information even when you're not in front of your laptop or desktop. All right, so I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint and kind of put up some summaries here. So in summary, if you're a department leader, use team accountability by adding a plan, the task by planner in a tab in Teams. Individual accountability with your one-on-one, your direct reports. You can use a planner that way. If you have a small cross-functional group, If it's a long-standing group that's going to persist, I would recommend making it a team and using Planner in the same way that we used it in the department setting. But if it's just a short-term group that's going to have a project and go away, one of the ways you could do it is the workaround by creating a plan and linking it to a chat that can also help. And then as an individual team member, I would recommend pinning the task by planner in Teams, and you can also do that in mobile, as I mentioned, and or use the To-Do app, which is also available on desktop or mobile. So again, some of that's personal preference if you use flagged emails or not, but the To-Do app pulls everything together, including flagged emails, whereas the task by planner does not yet pull in. I'm not sure if it's going to pull in flagged emails, but at least it does not yet pull in flagged emails. Okay. So next steps. Look, if we post this stuff to social, LinkedIn, Facebook. So if you want to keep updated on that, by all means, please like us or follow us on those media platforms. Share these events either with those internally or colleagues of yours that you think could benefit from this. I'd recommend. I would love it if you could join us for future events at mytech.com/events. You can subscribe there too if there's anything, if you want us to make sure that you get on the list to receive these event notifications. And finally, if there's some of this stuff you're trying to do it yourself and you want some help, just raise your hand, let us know. We'd happy to have a conversation and see if there's an opportunity for us to work together. So with that said, thank you all so much that are attending live. Thanks for attending and watching, and sorry for going a few minutes over, but hopefully it was valuable content that can help make your year, your department, and you as an individual more productive, and maybe keep a little sanity too, because it can help you consolidate all your action items and feel like you have your hands wrapped around all those actions that people are expecting you to do to complete projects on time.